certainly the way I used the colors, the way I used also the motions in painting or the techniques would be, I would try to imitate sometimes what I do on viola, in the sense that more important than maybe the message of the painting is how you created the painting. It's the method, you know. And for me, that was the connection between music and art.
Hello, Mark.
Hello, Petra.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Now, finally, we see each other. The last time we spoke was on the phone.
It was quite some time ago.
Yeah. You've been doing some great work with your art. I remember when we spoke last time, it was, yeah, it's so amazing what you're doing. And this was something you started in lockdown.
This is something I started in lockdown. I think it was in 2020, before, so it was at the end of last summer. And that I put a bit of a pause because life came back to normal. And I had to take up my first love, which was viola and
Your
music.
viola.
So, but I painted about something like 30 paintings.
Oh, amazing.
Which is quite a lot.
Yeah, but now first, just tell me now first, what was the initial inspiration? What made you think of starting to paint?
I think it's a bit difficult to talk about inspiration, but I had a bit more motivation in the sense that I had always wanted to paint. I always thought that, you know, I'm an artist. Maybe I can translate my art onto canvas. I said, I have all this time, and I'm not doing anything. So why not give it a shot? And then, you know, it was the kind of the end of summer, beginning of autumn, and all the colors were changing, and there's this special weather that's happening, and it's really beautiful, lots of colors. And that's also, I went for long walks in the forest to get some inspiration. And I think it was also it was both a very, it was a very good time for a lot of people in the sense that they got to stay home with their families and time for themselves. And it was also very bad that they couldn't live their normal lives. And I think I took all that and I put that into my paintings.
Well, what is so interesting, what you're saying now, is that you went for walks and that you noticed the colors and things like that. And I wonder if we all just notice things that we, in our everyday life, just never noticed, or we saw it, but not really that it really made such an impact, you know, that we have to think of, okay, I can actually paint this.
Certainly. I definitely took more time to smell flowers.
Really?
You know, I would stop and I would appreciate things a bit more than I do now. Now I'm in a rush to get from place to place.
Yeah.
Do you feel the same way?
I do. No, I definitely do. I remember also walking slower. You know, I tend to walk fast, but I sort of slowed down a lot because I thought, okay, so where am I running to at the moment? You know, so it was really, I did it, I definitely feel, and also noticed more because I think our minds were also a bit clearer. Of course, I took many pictures. I ran around Vienna and took pictures of people. So that also made me notice things about the city that I otherwise would never have. I went to places that I otherwise never would have been to, and so on. But then now, so you basically have no training or no education in art. I mean, in sort of painting. How do you start in such a blank canvas and just? Did you have these pictures in your head already?
I really like art. I really do appreciate painting, and I like. I always love a good museum, and there are many painters who I appreciate. Because I don't have any classical training or any technique to that extent, I do mostly abstract, a bit of figurative work, but I basically just started. You know, I bought canvas, I bought paints, and I just experimented. And over time, my paintings really changed. And And it came to a point where I no longer, I felt like I had all this stuff inside. I just wanted to get out and see where it, it's emotions and that you cannot really express in words. So you use something to maybe get it out. And there was a certain point when a cousin of mine, a young cousin, he got a heart attack and he passed away suddenly. And the last painting I painted, I had him in mind. And it was a real struggle. It was a real battle. I was pushing paint, taking off paint, redoing it, and the colors were getting mixed and they get gray after a while. And it was really a battle. And that's when I said, okay, it's all out. I have no more to give. So it wasn't more of a, do I have technique or do I have an image in mind? It was more like I had to just empty myself of all this, this emotion over the summer,
But when I saw your paintings, the colors fascinate me so much. How you use the colors and the colors you put together as well. It's so fascinating, and also that I can see things in your paintings. You can actually, it's not just you see shapes in your paintings as well. So it's like almost as if they carry a little message, which I like. That you can discover something that I think maybe different in a different mindset. You will discover a different message in your paintings.
I'd like to think so as well. I think that as a musician, I think we are constantly searching for colors and shapes as well. When we talk about music, we talk about timbre and tone. Is it warm? Is it cold? Is it hot? Is it blue? Is it purple? We speak in abstract terms. And so for me, going to the art store and purchasing these crazy colors was absolutely normal to me. And I think also to paint with such colors, you also have to be a bit daring. You have to be prepared that it comes out really strange or in poor taste. You're trying to also balance creativity with taste. You want it to be pleasing to you and to others. So sometimes you make something, you're like, ooh, this is not me,
Yeah.
and you have to start over.
But you're talking about the colors, and this is sometimes what I, as a non-musician, many musicians talk about the color of the music, or they talk about a composer and the colors of his music, and I couldn't understand what they meant by that. Right. But now, when you bought these colors, for example, did they speak in music for you then when you put that down on the canvas? Like you could, the color, did it give you a sort of a feeling of, or a mood?
Certainly. I don't know if I can connect it exactly to what the colors of music give me, in the sense that these colors, like in the tubes, that I use in painting, they're permanent. Like they're there. But the colors in music you create and they're gone just as soon as you made them. So while there are two different types of colors. The paintings stay around forever, and the music goes into the universe, and therefore I can't really compare the two. But certainly the way I used the colors, the way I used also the motions in painting, or the techniques would be, I would try to imitate sometimes what I do on viola, in the sense that more important than maybe the message of the painting is how you created the painting. It's the method, and for me, that was the connection between music and art. I have a painting here. If you'd like, I can show one to you. Please, with a lot of color.
I just wanted to ask you, can you please show some of the paintings? That would
sure.
Be
so I'm organizing my first exhibition on the 28th of November here in Brussels, and I put as a poster, I put one of a painting I made, which also was a battle in itself. It started off as something else, and then I never liked it, so I painted over it, and I did something else, and it became, from my most a hated painting to my favorite painting.
Really?
And this is it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, this is amazing.
Yeah.
But
Thank you.
and again the colors and the shapes. And what did you change on this?
Well, this was completely different. This was like a circle, like a pink
Yeah.
something. It was no good. It was just really not interesting. It wasn't, and I had to really go back and rethink what I wanted to portray. And I got this very cool paint that's kind of metallic and it shines in the light. You can probably see it. And then there's there's different mediums. So I used acrylic and I used gouache, which is water-based. So you also have a difference of mediums. And then I took I'll show you. I have this,
Oh, yeah.
which I used to make these kind of big
The line,
like
yeah.
cuts through the paint. They're literally cuts, and basically, so the technique also represents how I felt at the time, and also just kind of an emotion in a way. You know, you have this gold and beautiful, and then you also have this kind of muddy, and there should be a balance, I think, in every painting. And
Yeah.
as for the shapes, you know, they come in the moment. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't.
But
Like
there's a
in
lot
life.
of, yeah, I can see it. It's almost as if you see in the distance, as if you have these things in front, these colors and shapes, and then there's something in the distance. You know, I love that.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
well. That's what
There's
I want to give a bit of perspective.
Yeah.
With these blues and these, you know, but I'm telling you once again, I'm an amateur. I mean, I'm self-taught. I'm autodidactic.
But you know,
It's for pleasure.
yeah, but you know, I think this is also something that I think is a misconception about art, that you have to be trained. And I think, yes, of course, you have to be trained to play an instrument. And so,
Yeah.
but it doesn't, you know, it doesn't say that somebody who is self-taught is not also, and who practices every single day, and you know, who has the gift to do it, then it's also not to say or to dismiss that. Of
Absolutely.
course, you know, of course, I'm sure if you go for art, to study art, there will be some things that you learn that could benefit you. But then, you know, this is just a raw talent that you have there, and that's already so impressive. And I
Thank
think,
you, Petra.
I really think we should appreciate more this type of thing that comes naturally, because I think I'm a self-taught photographer, and I'm sure I can learn so much more about photography. But I've also had people who studied photography said that has taken their spontaneity about photography away. You know, about they overthink everything and they're overcritical about what they do.
True.
And
I think there's also a nice distinction to be made between people who also do it as a hobby and people who do it professionally. And some people, for example, who play piano for fun, enjoy it more than people who play piano professionally. You know, sometimes because it's no longer work, or I like the example of tennis. You know, these top tennis players, they have to work so hard. I mean, the training and the injuries and this and that and the traveling, the pressure. I think, well, why not just do it for fun and really just enjoy, you know, without the racket smashing and the drama.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. I think that art should tell a story.
Yeah.
So, and you don't have to be trained to tell a story.
Exactly. Yeah. And what else do you have there to show?
A few more.
Please. Yeah. I love that we can do this on Zoom, you know?
That's great.
I like the colors there. Oh, yes, that's beautiful. Oh, that's beautiful. It looks like fire almost, you know?
Exactly. And it's called By the Fire.
Really?
Yes. And if you look closely, this painting was entirely done, well, mostly done with the spatula tool I showed you earlier.
Yeah.
So you can see the kind of the width. You know,
Yeah.
I would go around and make different impressions, and then I would put down a few different layers, and I really wanted to make it like a true fire, something a bit obscure, something like you don't really know what colors here, and some blues, you know, who knows what's in the fire, you know.
Yeah.
There is even some green, you know, you've
That's wonderful. Yeah.
thank you. Thank you.
Really, it's you know, and the like I say, your color combinations for me is amazing. How you do that?
Thank you. It's really it's as it goes. You know, the painting,
Yeah.
you have an idea in mind, and then it changes often as you're painting.
Mm.
Like to see another?
Yes, please.
This is a completely different approach.
Oh, yeah.
So, and they're not for everybody. Some people like them more than others.
I love that. That looks so feminine.
Yeah, exactly. The
Really.
face.
Yes,
kind of,
with all the roundness and the colors, the pink, and that's beautiful.
thank you. Thank you. I mean, it's an experiment, you know. It's a
Yeah, but it's really, I mean, this is something that you can look at and find something, you know, like find these shapes. And this is what I saw on Facebook when I looked at the pictures you posted as well. It's almost as if you look and every time you see something different, you know, you notice something more.
yes,
And I think that
exactly.
would be so interesting in an art gallery to walk through your paintings and to discover and to you know to see what you to find something in that.
I think it's nice if the someone told me, Mark, never describe your paintings to people. Don't tell them what you see. Let them pull. You know, it's all about the interaction between the viewer and the painting. So if I write something like even the title, it could influence how they see the painting. And what I'm aiming for is an interaction between the viewer and the piece of work.
Mm.
I think that's also the art. It's
Yeah.
it's the interaction that's part of the experience.
Yeah.
Here's one more that I'll show you. This is a much more abstract.
Yeah.
And I had, it's actually my mother's favorite.
Really?
She's like, I want this one. So it's
Really?
hers.
Yeah. But it
Um,
almost, you know, it almost has this the Klimt colors, you know, the black and gold, and it almost has
absolutely.
that feeling, yeah, for me.
Absolutely. And you know what? What I always say to my friends jokingly, I say, when you buy it, you can put it anywhere you want. So if you like it more this
Yeah.
way,
Yeah.
you know, it almost like it's almost like a pond with water reflecting something, you know.
Yes, now I see that. I
You
can
know,
see that now.
there's
Yeah.
so much happening. Or if you do it this way, there's a whole other maybe they're figures. You know,
Yeah.
people here, one person, another person. People see what
Yeah.
they want to see.
I saw it in this in the length is like that.
Me too.
I imagined it as figures,
Yeah,
you know.
it's called. Well, I'll tell you the name, but I call
Yeah.
it party time.
Well, I was going to say that on the right hand side, it looks like people dancing, a
Right?
couple dancing. Yeah.
They're like, woo.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I painted it, I was in a very, very good mood.
I always see.
So,
Okay. So that makes sense. Yeah.
so there you go. I have so many more, but I don't think I can show them all to you today. I can show you one of my very early ones.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I can show you one of my early ones, which was.
I love this. I love this art show that I'm getting here on Zoom.
It's fun. It's my first online exhibition. There you go.
Yeah.
I painted. This is my first. It's a bit dusty. I painted my first oil painting with a friend, and she taught me she was teaching me some techniques with oil paint. The problem is that oil paint is a bit more complicated than acrylic, so I didn't do too much. But this was right after I had visited the Magritte Museum.
Oh, yeah.
So there's some um, there's a bit of irony in it. I mean, it was a complete experiment, but it's almost
I
like
love this one. And
Oh,
this
thank
is
you.
your first.
This is one of my first oil paint, my second oil painting. So this is all oil, and it's kind of like
Wow.
petals,
Yeah.
like flower petals with an eye.
With an eye. I saw the eye, and I like. I like this very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. And what
We'll
was what is the idea behind that? What what made you put the eye there?
I guess that I was learning about painting, you know, and I was having my eyes opened to a whole new world,
Yeah.
and I just was just thinking, this is all new territory for me,
Yeah.
and this is kind of this like new territorial work.
But Mark, I understand what you say. That's people say you shouldn't talk about your art or you shouldn't tell people about. But I think it's also important to say, because if you highlight one, like you mentioned some things here about your artwork, and then suddenly I saw something, or or I realized something, and I think this is also important in music, that if you can just guide people to listen, or to if you guide people to see a little aspect of your painting. So now that you mentioned something about the eye and the flower, it has a great meaning for me. Actually, I have my own interpretation now of it, and I think it's wonderful. I think artists should do that. They should almost give you a little nudge into a direction, and to make your mind go. And I think everybody that looks at a painting or that hears music will have their own interpretation in the end.
I agree. I agree. I think a little nudge there's
Yeah.
nothing harmful with a little nudge.
Yeah, it's not
It's
like
actually helpful.
yeah, when we were in school, we were taught how to analyze a poem, and we had to always see this, what was meant with that. And I sometimes, as a child, as a student, I sometimes got total different meanings out of these poems, and but that was then not accepted, because that was not how it was taught. And this is why I'm thinking that art should really be, I think everybody will have their own interpretation anyway, but it would be a nice way to just guide people to just in a direction.
That's why I think for the exhibition, I'll put little stickers with just
Yeah,
title, but just a
yeah,
bit.
yeah,
Not a big
definitely.
explanation.
But now
This one, by the way, is also
yeah,
mine. This big one back here.
it's beautiful. That looks so
Thank you.
calm. It looks very calm and peaceful.
It is. It
Yeah.
definitely is. It was one of these typical rainy weeks in Belgium, and I'm in Brussels now, and I was experimenting with new techniques, and this amazing painting came out of it. Actually, this is the second layer. I had painted something else that I wasn't happy with, and I transformed it, and I'm so glad I did.
Yeah.
Which is also kind of a lesson for me, because some paintings of mine, I think 3 or 4, I had 2 or 3 I'd repainted over, and it's a risk to paint over. It's to change what you've created, but I think it's also sometimes necessary. I think you can mirror that in your own life. If you're not satisfied with something, maybe you have to dare to go back and change it or rectify it, it's it's a learning experience.
Yeah, I think it's also, I see that in photography, but then on the other hand, I used to go back and change things on my pictures, not edit, but change light, or I used to just, I've deleted sometimes things that I went back and got out of my, um, what do you say, and after you've deleted it, what is
in your
the
garbage bin, like in your
yeah.
trash.
Um, because just because I dismissed it as I threw it out, and then a few weeks later, I think, wait a minute, there was something in that picture, in those pictures that I just deleted that is actually not bad. And then I went back and got them, or even if I just put them aside and I go back to them, I discover new things that I didn't see on that time. And I think it's because I think initially when you do it, then you are very overcritical. And then when you go back and your mind has rested, then you'll also see it in a different way.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And you also need time
Yeah.
to make a decision as well.
Well,
So
I never, after a photo shoot, I always wait about 48 hours before I download the pictures or before I look at the pictures, because of this reason, that I want my mind to be rested when I look at the pictures. But now, Mark, tell me about your viola. You're a
right.
violist and you are playing in an orchestra in Belgium.
Yes. So for the people who have been watching, I'm actually a professional violist.
Yeah.
I'm a solo violist in the National Orchestra of Belgium. I'm also a professor at the Royal Conservatory in Mons in the south of Belgium. And I organize concerts. I have a chamber music festival. I travel to give recitals and concerts, and I'm what they call a traveling musician, like the cliche. And it's my passion. It's my love. I studied in conservatory. I've given master classes and concerts all over Europe and all over the world, and um, that's my first love for sure, and will probably always be my first love, hopefully. Um,
But where did you start? When did you start with the viola?
I
Or
started
what made you start?
well, I'm from New York City,
Mm.
and in New York, my mother and father both really love music, so they started us quite young. My sister also plays cello, so they started us quite young in a music school, and uh, with this community of people, they really support you, and every time you perform, they're behind you and they support you, and you get better and better, and you go to a festival here and you learn, you go to another festival, you take classes, um, and then I developed quite a talent for it that I really cultivated. I worked really hard. I'm still working hard. And I went on to the Netherlands, to Amsterdam, to perfect my studies for 4 years. And after that, of course, that's when you do a lot of growing. So you leave school and then you really start to blossom. You've got all this information and then you get to expand. And right after school, it was right after the financial crisis in 2008. So this was 2010. So it was still pretty bad, especially for musicians. It was a time where I think Broadway musicals had no money to pay musicians, so they were playing CDs for their singers. It was really
Really?
like a disaster. No concerts, very sad. So I found a job. I went online to look for a post, and I did the competition, and it changed my life. So it's been almost 10 years that I'm in this orchestra, and I'm invited to play in other orchestras all over the world, and it's wonderful. It's a wonderful experience.
Yeah, so you've been there in Belgium, so in Brussels, then all the time, the 10 years that you've been there.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Of course, traveling,
Yeah.
playing solo concerts, quite a lot of solo concerts, and I'm coming out with a disc soon, a new CD. So there's a lot of
Really?
things. Yeah,
Yeah.
it gives you a lot of time and to work, and I have many passions within the music field. So
Mm.
And
And
so was always normal to me. We always had art in the house on our walls, and I would go to exhibitions sometimes, and I'm sure many of you have thought this. You went to some contemporary art exhibition, you go, oh, I can do that, you know,
mm,
I can probably do that and better. And so I said, why not? Let's
yeah,
make art for my own walls.
yeah. But now, as a New Yorker in Belgium, how was the transition for you?
It was natural. It was very, very easy. I had spent 4 years in the Netherlands, so I was already used to the kind of
Okay, yeah,
smaller lifestyle. And New York, frankly, was too hectic and too big and too chaotic for me. And it changed. In New York, in a way, you might be surprised to hear this, but a city of 9 million felt at one point in my childhood like a town. You know, there were a lot of family-owned businesses, and there was a sense of community, and it turned into this very commercial place that I no longer recognized. And I just started to drift further and further away from the city. And when I came here, I said, "This is it. You know, if I can get to the other side of town in 15 minutes, this
yeah,
is this is
yeah,
this is the place for me." And I think in general, as a musician, there isn't as much saturation as there is in New York. I mean, it's big. It's a lot of competition. It's a lot of noise. It's a what we say. It's a rat race, and everyone is trying to get that concert, get that thing, and it was just too much for me. It no longer interested me. So I was having a hard time growing as a musician there.
mm. And now that you're also teaching, you say you're a professor, and how do you find the young musicians coming up now after the pandemic? What is the feeling with them, and how do you see their future compared to
Hmm.
what you had? Because you also came from a difficult time, a difficult period in New York, but now it's a global thing. Now it's everywhere.
Yeah. I think they're very optimistic, luckily. My students are all very proactive. So they are going off doing auditions for youth orchestras, for professional orchestras. Some have already been accepted to these orchestras. Some are also working at the same time as studying. So I'm very proud of them in that sense. And they they they're not gonna let this pandemic dictate how they progress musically, and I think that they shouldn't. I think that the world has had enough of this, and we want our old lives back. And it means it's going to have to mean just getting back into it, just doing it.
Mm.
Like painting, just buy a canvas, buy the paint, and experiment and go for it. And I think that's what's happening slowly, slowly. Concerts are starting to reopen. Um, you know, things are opening. Things are open,
Yeah.
and I mean, we're still in a pandemic. I mean, there's still the virus is out there, but we still have to live. We still have to enjoy what little time we have on this earth. So,
Yeah.
in that sense, they're very optimistic.
Well, I always have had this idea after speaking to a lot of the students here at the MDV and MOOC that we might see something different that they might start doing different things because they are sort of forced to do it. That they start doing things in a different way, and I feel also positive for them because I think they're at a stage in their lives where they really have nothing to lose. They can just,
Mm.
from here on, gain. Um,
Mm.
but
Absolutely.
there's a lovely group there in Belgium, FLORES and the Flames. Have you heard of them?
I have not.
Yeah, they actually they're musicians, and I think they're all classically trained, and they've started this they're all three redheads or four redheads, and this is why they call themselves FLORES and the Flames. But they really take classical music to a total different level. I mean, it is so wonderful, their energy and how they play. It's great.
I mean, I agree that we really have to be innovative.
Yeah.
Especially now, and also to use social media and the internet as a great tool. But I also don't want my students to, I don't want exactly the young generation to go solely, cyber, solely on the computer. I want to insist that playing for people, in front of people, giving that physical connection is, it's incomparable. There's nothing better than it. And actually, last night we did a class concert where all of my students performed for the first time this year, and it was really they were all filming each other and very supportive. But we also, you could see what areas they were comfortable and what areas they were uncomfortable. And some were very happy with their performances, others were less happy. And I said, look, if you didn't learn anything from this performance, right, that would have been the biggest upset. It's not learning from this experience. If just being sad or just being really happy is not really the point. The point is to learn. And every time I go on stage, I learn something, and I think this is really important for the next generation who haven't had the opportunity to perform on stage for the past 2 years. Especially if they're not a professional, they don't have concerts. They're just studying. They don't even have the opportunity to play. So I say, organize concerts, get your family and friends together, do a live stream. And this is, I think this is the only way to kind of get back into how we used to make music. I have to prepare them for the real world. So
I actually think also, I mean, during the summer of the pandemic, there were a lot more young students playing in Vienna in the parks and in the streets, and I love that. I love the fact that that they do that, because they are then in a total different relaxed mode, and they're enjoying it, and they dress down, and it's a different audience as well. And I think it's also a way of just getting out there and just playing and doing things, and I think in this way they will also bring audiences to the concerts, because it's now people hearing the music and being close, and young people being close to the musicians. There's not the barrier of the stage, and I think that's a wonderful idea.
You and I had a discussion quite some time ago about this.
Exactly, yeah.
About my opinion, our opinions on classical music in the streets. And I think I had a point of view that I still share today, which is a conflicted. I have 2 points of view on this. While I think it's a very good thing to bridge the gap between the young generation and even the young generation playing classical music. So basically the people who know little about classical music and the people who play classical music, is a gap that I think should be bridged in a manner that that respects the art and that respects the artist. So when you go into the parks and you play, in the plaza or something like this, I worry sometimes that it lowers the perception of what we do, and people may have less respect for what we do. However, I think it's wonderful. I also used to, when I was a student, I played outside. It's fun, it's inspirational. It's off the cuff. It's what's the word I'm looking for? Not sporadic, but it's what's the word I'm looking for here?
Spontaneous.
Spontaneous. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah,
And that is also something
yeah.
that's needed in art as well.
Mm.
And it definitely, yes, it does make it a bit more accessible. But then again, how many people play, and then you have all these people who just walk by. They did an experiment with Joshua Bell, famous violinist. Joshua Bell, he was playing his $3 million Stradivarius in the subway of
Oh, yeah,
Boston,
yeah, yeah.
with a hat and and his case open for people to put money, playing like he does, which is extraordinarily beautiful, and nobody noticed. They treated him as just another street musician. Little did they realize that they were listening to a world-class artist for free. But it
Yeah,
was all about they spoke about, it's the context of where you hear the music that changes your perception of it.
yeah.
So I have my reservations about this, but I'm
No, I
I'm
totally,
torn.
yeah, I agree with you there as well. I mean, I see your point in both. But for me, I was just thinking that if you, like when the concert halls were closed anyway, and you had no other option, and I think it was a way of, I thought that what I saw on the streets, because I sometimes recognized the students that I photographed when I was watching them, and you also see young children being fascinated because you are so close to the instrument. And for me, I kept thinking we should get the young generation interested in classical music and used to hearing classical music. And I think that is what I thought was wonderful. But yeah, I also have, I think art should be valued, and it should be valued in money, but it should also be valued in appreciating what artists do to be able to do this form of art. And I mean, it's the same with photography as well. Pictures are not really valued because everybody has a camera and everybody takes pictures. So pictures are not valued, yet pictures are, pictures tell us part of history where we were not there. And this is why I don't like to edit pictures, because I think we disturb history when we start editing, because we learn from pictures from the past. We can learn so much, and if you start editing the pictures, then you mess with what we can learn. So it's that sort of thing.
You're like a period photographer, like you have these period instrument players, like they only play Baroque.
Yeah.
You don't want to mess with history too much.
Yeah.
That's
No,
nice.
I like things. Yeah, this is why I never edit out a dustbin or anything. I leave the things as they are. If I do, say, for instance, street photography, unless I crop it out, but I wouldn't remove it from the scene with Photoshop or something like that, because I just think if it's there, then it's there. But Mark, this was so lovely to talk to you again, and I'm wishing you all the best with your exhibition. I'm very happy that you do this exhibition, because I really think people have to stand in front of your paintings and experience what they see there.
Thank you, Petra.
Yeah.
Thank you for showing this side of who I am and of all the other artists, and I think we need more of it. Would you like me to play something small before we go?
Yes, please.
Yeah?
That would be great. And I so love a viola. I
Oh,
love
me
the
too.
sound. I love the sound of a viola so much. Yeah.
Can you hear it okay?
Yeah.
I haven't played today, so forgive me for anything.
Oh, okay. Oh, Mark, this is so beautiful. And you were perfectly color coded with your painting at the back, and it was perfect.
It's true. We match.
So
It's
much.
true.
Oh, this is beautiful. Just hold your instrument up. Beautiful. Oh, wow. This is beautiful.
Yeah, she's absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah,
I have her since 17 years.
really
So we know each other quite well.
beautiful. I love the sound of the viola, that deep
Thank you.
sound. It's, yeah.
It's beautiful.
Mark, this was so wonderful to talk to you, and thank you so much for all this art that you've given me today.
Thank you, Petra.
Mark, all the best.
Thank you.
And
You
let
too.
me know when you are in Vienna
Absolutely.
that we meet in person. Okay.
Fantastic. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you for watching.